anybody who's exited is in a league of their own. But then, how do you think about somebody who's exited from the same startup twice and is now building her second startup? I don't think I know anybody who has exited from the same startup.
So markets turned, interest rates went up. We have to shut this down. When we bought the business back,
sold again. Something big's been happening every year. Okay, so how did it feel? You know, when that acquisition happened, what were your thoughts or what were your feelings when you were being acquired?
Anuscha is the rare founder who's played every seat at the table. Wall Street analyst, regional investor, and now repeat fintech and legal tech entrepreneur.
She co-founded Spotii in the UAE, scaled it across KSA and Bahrain, and made it the first BNPL player to be licensed by the Saudi Central Bank.
She then led Spotii's sale to global BNPL giant Zipco, took the business back when they exited MENA, and merged the platform with Nimcard to power instant credit.
Today, she's the co-founder of Qanooni, using AI to change the way lawyers operate across the region.
What is something that the legal sector keeps getting wrong?
you know, I was like, I have access to people who have access to capital, so fundraising cannot be hard.
Yeah. So you bought the business back with your own personal money?
Yes.
MENA Means Business, and because you're watching this, I'm assuming so do you. My name is Meena Tariq, and I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders at Metric, where we've built the chief financial AI for small and medium-sized businesses across emerging markets. So I was a VC before this, and when I look at founders, I do look at you're a first-time founder, you're a second-time founder, you're a third-time founder. And of course, anybody who's exited is in a league of their own. But then how do you think about somebody who's exited from the same startup twice and is now building her second startup? I have with me Anuscha today from Qanooni, but previously Spotii. Thank you so much, Anuscha, for joining us. I've been looking forward to this conversation because, like I said just now in your intro, I don't think I know anybody who has exited from the same. And I already look up to people who've exited, right? As somebody who's going through the absolute pain of building my first startup, I look at people who've exited and think, how do you get there and how does it feel? But then I look at you, who's done it twice and has decided to build another startup. I want to hear the story. So let's just start with that, Anuscha. Tell me the Spotii story.
So I was not always in startups. Very much like you, my background is actually in investing. So when I first moved to Dubai, I was working for the Abraj Group. I was doing private equity. After Abraj went in liquidation, I basically left that world. And that was a bit of a pause. And I think once in a while, everybody needs that kind of a bit of a pause to reassess what they want to do and where they want to go. And for me, I was like, okay, this is sort of a natural break in what looked like a corporate career. So why don't I try and see what I can do with that? And that was when I first started thinking about, okay, can I start a business? Is this something that I would enjoy and can I actually do? And I started having a conversation with Ziad, who is my co-founder in Spotii, also my co-founder in Qanooni, and also my brother. And he at the time was in San Francisco. Was obviously, they have that sort of energy about let's do startups. It's all that's where that world is. And he was working for a company called Afterpay, which is in the buy now pay later space. And I was like, okay, this is an actually really interesting business model. And I was the one who convinced him. I said, let's try and do this in the MENA region because this is something that's not happened in this part of the world. At least at that point in time, it hadn't.
Yeah, BNPL didn't really exist here back then. What year was this?
This was ended 2019.
Yeah.
We started building, and we actually did our first transaction in April of 2020.
Okay.
It was a bunch of things that happening at the time. COVID had just come in. Everything had gone into lockdown. I think March 2020 was when Dubai went into lockdown. And that was our first sort of point of, are we seriously doing this? Like, no one knew what was going to happen in COVID.
Yeah.
And so we were first-time founders, and we were in a very difficult position to say, are we nuts trying to execute on something we don't know that much about in such an uncertain environment?
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, and that's probably something that's driven us at every juncture where we've had to make a decision, we're like, let's just go for it, right? Let's see what happens. And we'd already spent significant time building at that point. And I was like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Somebody says no, or nobody buys our product, or, what's the worst that can really happen?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you don't put yourself out there, I think you'll never really answer that question. So we said, okay, let's go ahead. April 2020, we did our first transaction. And as it turned out, the tailwinds that COVID brought with it actually helped accelerate the business quite aggressively.
Yeah, like what? What tailwinds?
Well, first of all, because everything. So when we launched in the early part of 2020, we started speaking to retailers. The big pushback that we got was online sales are not relevant to us.
Yeah.
If you think back a couple of years, this market was very much about the malls, going in shopping.
Yeah.
There's
Very offline. Yeah.
All of the big groups basically told us that this is just not worth our time right now, because we were talking single digits in terms of what their online sales was. So the first thing that happened was everything went into lockdown. There were no more malls to go to. So if you wanted to sell something, you had to sell it online, right? The second thing that happened was economic uncertainty, meaning in the sense that a product like BNPL, which was giving flexibility of payment, started becoming very welcoming, because there was a lot of people who actually didn't know what was going to happen. And then people were spending time at home. And when you spend time at home, I don't know how your behavior changed, but people were shopping a lot. They were probably shopping a lot more than they would have on a daily basis.
I also stress shop. I mean, that's my coping mechanism.
And you were not alone in that, right? And also, it was all sorts of things. People sitting at home and looking at, a piece of furniture, said, let's replace it because I, want to look at. So shopping accelerated. It accelerated online. The product that we were offering was much needed at the time in order to counter the economic certainty. And everything started becoming more digital.
Yeah.
So if you think, again, going back, cash and delivery, for example, was a very big part of online shopping pre-2020.
Yeah.
Overnight, no one is accepting cash, right? So you needed digital payment mechanisms. So all of these factors contributed to significant growth in the business, and it accelerated far beyond our expectations. And it was not just happening locally, but it was happening globally. And we came across a business called Zip out of Australia.
Yeah.
They themselves had expanded significantly. They had grown from Australia to the US already, and they were looking at international expansion. And the Middle East was very much on their radar. So they initially bought a minority stake. So it was a strategic investor who came in a minority.
What year was this? What round at
So
Spotii?
this was, so we launched 2020. They took the minority in December 2020. So it was literally the same year.
Okay.
It was in the same, everything was moving
And it was
really
your first funding round?
We had taken a small amount of capital from a family office in the summer, but that was a fairly low amount. So this was the first significant investment that had come in. And so April 2020, we did our first transaction. December 2020, Zip took a minority stake. Now, they had built into the structure a put option. A call option. And what the idea was that by the time they had, I believe, 18 months to execute that call option. March of 21, they're like, we don't want to wait. We just want to execute the call option. And a lot of this was obviously facilitated by the growth in the business, right?
Yeah.
So there is something to be said. Obviously, there's no replacement for hard work and perseverance, but there's something else to be said about market timing and being at the right position with the right business model. And that's sort of where we were. So these guys who had theoretically 18 months to buy the business decided within 3 months that they wanted to. And then it took us a little bit of time in terms of figuring out the paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. So by October of 21, so about a year and a half after I launched the business, Zip had acquired 100% of Spotii. By that time, we were operating in Saudi, in Bahrain, in UAE. It was
But I mean, that
accelerated.
growth in itself is insane. That many countries in barely a year to 2 years of time.
Yeah. So that was I think also that's credit to the team. I mean, we had a really good team that worked.
How big was your team back then?
By the time Zip took over 100%, we were about 80 people or so.
Okay.
But that's across everything from marketing to sales, multi-country offices. Tech was obviously a big element of it, right? We built everything in-house.
Yeah.
And part of the attractiveness that Zip found in us was the tech platform that we built. In fact, they wanted to take elements of what we had created here to different parts of their organization globally. So you have to have faith in what you're building. You have to have confidence, and this came into play a little bit later. I'll tell you the rest of the story, it gets more interesting.
Okay, so how did it feel? When that acquisition happened, what were your thoughts or what were your feelings when you were being acquired?
To be fair, very mixed emotions, right? I think a lot of excitement just because of the pace at which everything had happened.
Yeah.
A little bit of doubt, were we selling too early? A little bit of, where else could I have taken this? And it was interesting because I think what really brought it home for me was when I told my kids. So this is another sort of element of having built a business in COVID.
Yeah.
I was building it at home.
Yeah.
And my kids were studying at home because the schools were closed.
Yeah.
So they were very vested in
front row seats. Front row seats. Yeah.
I have recordings from my kids' homeworks where I'm like on a call, probably losing my, probably having a really tough conversation with someone, and they're like trying to submit their math homework on video, and you can hear me in the background. So they were exactly like you said, front row seats. They were very vested in the success of Spotii. They knew every team member by name.
Yeah.
They knew their roles. They knew what upset me at times. They knew what made me happy.
Yeah.
They would track my merchant list. That was our dinner conversation. So very, very vested in Spotii.
In the words of my 5-year-old, they were co-founders.
Exactly.
She calls herself a metric co-founder. So your kids were also co-founders.
Yes, exactly. That was it, right? So it was 2020. So my daughter would have been 6, going on to 7. My son was 8. So they were very much living it. And when I told them that I'd sold it, they were so disappointed. They were like, why? Why? They couldn't understand it. And I think that was a bit of what I felt, a little bit of reflection as well. I think their innocence they just blurted it out, and they were just like, why?
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, look, I felt it was the right time. They were strategic reasons as well, because the business is a balance sheet heavy business.
Yeah.
Zip was coming in with a lot of capital, and you needed the capital to grow the business, right?
Also because you sold it so early on, you still had a really good part of the business that you got paid for, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, when you sell after quite a few
You get
rounds,
diluted.
you're diluted a lot. So we've heard stories of founders walking away with barely anything just because they had such a small part of the business anyway.
Right. So you have to think about all of those things, right? You have to have those trade-offs in your mind. And the way we'd structured the deal with Zip was that, we still continue to be part of the business.
Yeah.
So I wasn't entirely letting go either.
Okay.
So it did give us an ability to continue. So we ended up operating it as Zip's Middle East subsidiary.
Okay.
So Zip at the time is operating in about 14 different markets. Ziad and I were responsible for the Middle East under the broader Zip group.
Yeah.
And credit to the leadership of Zip, they were actually really founder friendly. That was the other big element of this, right? Because we saw them not as acquirers, but more as partners. Mm-hmm. They were all about allowing the founders to continue to lead the businesses on the ground.
Okay.
And so for us, it was a way to continue still execute on what we wanted to build, but have the support of a larger parent group. So we're not constantly worried about funding and fundraising, right?
Yeah.
So I thought there was a lot of logic in terms of doing that transaction. And for a while, it worked really well. Zip got us resources, including access to international brands that they had already partnered with, they were bringing to market, right? So the story on them being able to accelerate our growth was playing out really nicely.
Yeah.
We were hitting all of our milestones, and if you'd asked me 6 months after the deal, was it the right thing to do? I would have said 100%. I was very happy with that decision.
Okay.
Right? It did take some of that founder burden off.
Yeah.
You know how it is. You worry
the
about
financial
this,
uncertainty, the existential crisis.
Correct. And the responsibility. When your team grows to a certain size, you are responsible for them, right?
Constantly. I think that's the biggest one.
And you have to do right by the team all the time. So and as a founder, that puts a lot of weight. So removing some of that burden, but still having the ability to grow the business in the way that we always envisioned it, sounded like a good opportunity for us,
And
right?
then what went wrong?
So markets turned. Zip is publicly listed.
Okay.
You can actually you can track their share price.
Yeah.
And interestingly, this was about the summer of 2022. So now we're about 2 years into Spotii's journey. Summer of 2022, interest rates went up. And if you know how the BNPL model works, they're very dependent on borrowing in order to fund the growth.
Yeah.
When rates went up, markets were very vicious. Even Klarna, which was one of the largest players, like lost about 75% of its value. They did a massive down round at the time.
Wow.
Zip had a significant fall in its share price. And what the leadership said was, we need to conserve our resources and we want to just focus on Australia and the US.
Okay.
That was their core markets.
Yeah.
That's where they had their growth.
I mean, money always gets pulled out of emerging markets first, right?
Yeah,
That's just,
and at the time Spotii was still not profitable, right? So they would have to continue to fund the business
Yeah,
till we got to a scale that we were. So they said, okay, we have to shut this down, right? And Ziad and I saw that as an opportunity to say, we understand why you're doing this. It doesn't necessarily remove the market reality or the opportunity on the ground, and it's not a reflection on the business we've built and the technology that we've built, right? So again, coming back to the point of having faith in what you're building and seeing what is it that you can use that for, and finding value where potentially somebody else doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So we went back to Zip and we said, we'd like to buy the business back. We will help you transition out of the market, but allow us to continue to operate the business. So we did that transaction, and
So you bought the business back with your own personal money?
yes,
Okay.
and we then pivoted the business model.
Okay.
So we were direct to consumer, B2B, B2C, BNPL, very traditional. But when we bought the business back, we didn't have the balance sheet support from Zip anymore. So us funding the credit didn't make sense. So then Ziad and I said, okay, what can we do with this technology platform? We pivoted it to a B2B model.
Okay.
So we said we will license it, we'll white label the solution. And I think this is the other part of the story. You have to be flexible, right? Don't get stuck in what you think that path is for you. You have to be able to maneuver and understand what you have in your hand and how do you actually get the most value out of it. And so we decided we're going to pivot it to B2B model, where because we'd already built the tech stack, we had the credit engine, we had at that time about 2.5 years of operating history, millions of customers, right? That you could use to do the credit analysis for.
Yeah, lots of transaction data.
Lots of transaction data and a scalable model. Like it was a solid tech platform, right? We had demonstrated that you could scale it in different regions and that volume wasn't an issue, stability was there, etc. So we started licensing it to other players. And this was across the board. It was BNPL, new startups who wanted to faster go to market.
Okay.
It was NBFIs. It was other fintechs who just wanted the credit piece of it, the credit decisioning piece of it. And we started getting sort of into that and onto that journey. And in that process, we came across NimCard. If you know anything about NimCard, they're a business that started their life as a card processor. Brilliant founder, once again, and he has a vision of making it a much larger organization, and he wanted to expand from that original base as a credit processor to doing banking as a service in its entirety. And obviously a large part of banking as a service is a credit component of it. So he saw value in the platform that it built, and he saw it as a chance to accelerate his own plans on bringing banking as a service to NimCard. And he then ended up acquiring the Spotii tech platform.
What year was this?
This was the summer of 23. So about a year or so into that. So now Spotii at this point has been around for about 3 years.
And literally something big's been happening every year.
Every 6 months.
Starting 2020, 2021, you sell it. 2022, you buy it back.
Yes.
2023, you sell it again.
Yes. pretty much.
And then when you sold it again in 2023, that time you also stopped working in Spotii, or no, you still
Spotii
kept
then
on?
became part of NIM. They acquired the all the assets, the IP, etc. We joined the NIM card team for a little bit. Particularly wanted to ensure that there was a smooth transition.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of
you had a
handover
lock-in
stuff
period,
to do. Make sure that the tech was fully transitioned to them. Make sure the team was fully transitioned to them. So we stayed with NIM for a little bit. And then, then that was.
How did the kids feel about Spotii getting sold again? How did they feel about you buying it back?
I think after that first transaction, they were kind of like, I think it was at that point they kind of gave up on the story. I don't think they could have followed the rest of it. They knew we joined NIM, so that part they were aware of. But since then, Ziad and I were like, okay, are we done now?
But you were not done. You sold it 2023.
Yes, we were not done. It was a debate, right? Like go back for me personally as well, right? Like I could have just used that as an opportunity, take a pause, go back to corporate. I'm sure somebody would hire me, or do this again.
Why?
I don't
know.
Why
do it again?
So why? I think what I realized was that I did enjoy building.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't, the best part of our and even today is when somebody who uses what we've created says, this is really good.
Yeah.
You've made my life easier. Or this tool is so cool, it does X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, it does X, Y, and Z, right? And that's a really good feeling.
Oh, it's the best.
Yeah, and I think that was a little bit of, so said, okay, we've done this once, and it wasn't a straight journey, right? There was ups and downs. There were at every point you have to make a difficult decision, right? Even the exit was a difficult decision.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're making all these decisions, and we're, you are constantly under a lot of stress. And so I was like, do I want to do this again? What I've realized though is having done it the first time, doing it the second time has been a bit easier, in the sense that I have been able to manage those stresses a lot better. I have learned to lean on people a lot more in terms of getting support for different things, which was my own growth as well from when I was with Spotii. And so 24 started thinking about what we wanted to build.
So you took a year off, or not even a full year?
We were at NIM, so we were still helping with the transition. We still had responsibilities at NIM.
And you started thinking through.
This is more about just processing, right? Like thinking. Yeah. What is it that we want to do? What do we want to do?
Did you ever get a coach, like a mind coach or a therapist?
I haven't. And it's interesting that you asked that, because I've thought about it a lot.
Yeah.
My husband is my unofficial therapist.
Of course.
So I think, whether it's Spotii, whether it's Qanooni, I don't think I would have been able to do it without him. So I do think it is healthy to have someone to speak to.
Yeah.
I think that coaches and therapists bring a lot of value. I've struggled with time, to be honest, to be able to do that.
I think that's the biggest one.
And but I've also been very fortunate that I do have Ziad as my co-founder, who is also family.
Yeah.
And he kind of fully understands what we're going through, and so he's a good sounding block as well.
So on that a little bit. Sorry,
I was going to say I was going to close that with, I would recommend a strong co-founder for anybody who's going into the business.
I was going to say the co-founder relationship, because my co-founders are also related to me, right? And I get that question a lot. And I think what my learning has also been, as you said, that before you start, your relationship should already be so strong that it's able to weather all of that, the craziness that comes.
And that's the thing, right? Like we had to make a conscious, it was not easy. It's not easy.
No.
In some ways it gets even more complicated when family is involved, right?
Yeah.
And there was a point where Ziad and I had to make a conscious decision. Like we had to actively talk about this and said, look, either we figure out the boundaries between work and home and realize that when we're challenging each other, when we're arguing with each other, which we do a lot.
Yeah.
we're doing it from a position of what is best interest of the business and for each other. We're not coming, you have to have trust in what the other person is bringing to the table and why they're saying something.
Yeah.
Because without that trust, you will constantly be in doubt of what is happening.
Yeah.
And you don't have the luxury of that doubt when you're founding a business and you're trying to grow it.
Yeah.
So you need to have so we said, look, either we do this in a manner where it does not destroy our relationship, or we shut the business down because the relationship is more important.
Yeah.
Right? And we found a way to work together. And since that decision and that active conversation, everything ended up flowing a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
We are now symbiotic in terms of what are our strengths and weaknesses. I know what I can rely on him for. He knows what he can rely on me for.
Yeah.
I think, and that is so important. I do not think I would have been able to, I do not think that Spotii would have been successful without him. And I do not think that I would have done a second startup without him.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I could have found another co-founder with that kind of relationship that I could trust as much. And also, I know his capabilities. I know what we can achieve, right? So I think it's very, very important. And then to answer your question, so I have support in that structure, and then I have support at home. That, again, is, I think, indispensable. Somebody that has that faith, because I'm sure you feel this. A lot of times you come in and you're like, what am I doing?
Why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Can I do this? You are filled with self-doubt, right?
Yeah.
You need, and you will bring that self-doubt home. You need a champion at home that will tell you, no, you can do this, right? And it's not that he's just the champion, but he will have a logical conversation with me. He will help me think through strategy. He will help me think through, and and if I'm doing something wrong, he'll call me out on it, but in a good way, right? So that gives me that comfort and support at home, and I know I can always rely on him. And I don't think a lot of people know this, but very early on in the Spotii journey, like I said, we didn't take that much capital before Zip. So before Zip put their first minority investment, so this is they put the money in end of December. And I remember November, I was like, I know Zip's coming, but they haven't wired. They haven't signed this yet because there's still little bits and blah, but I know they're going to come.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but I don't have money in the bank today to make salary on December 1st.
Oh my God.
Right? And I was like, no, they told me they're going to fund by the end of November. They're going to do it. I know, come November, like it was the 25th, 26th of November, I was like, they still haven't funded. They need 2 more weeks. I do not want to miss payroll on the 1st. And he saw the stress I was in, and he's like, okay, and he's like, look, we have some assets in the US, we liquidate those. You can do a shareholder loan into the business, and when Zip's capital comes in, you can repay it back.
Yeah.
And he helped me bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that, and he did
That's
it without,
priceless, right?
And he did it without much hesitation. He's like, what's the issue?
Yeah. How do we solve it?
I said, this is the issue. And I said, it's his savings. I wouldn't have asked him for it. But at the end of the day, he had to, you need somebody with that much faith in you that they will back you without question.
Yeah. And you know what you said about self-doubt? The thing is, as a founder, and especially as a VC kind of funded, VC route founder, that founder's self-doubt, there is no other place for you to take it other than home, because it cannot go outwards. You cannot take it into the workplace, because the minute the founder has self-doubt, the team is going to start jumping ship, because they're like, okay, if MENA doesn't believe this, then
of course.
what are we doing, right? You cannot talk to your investors about it, because again, even your favorite investors, there is that kind of a little bit of that wall which you never breach, because you don't want to put out your doubts into the world. You never want to voice them. So often the only place you can actually, or you should be able to voice them, is home.
Yes.
And if you don't have that support at home, then I mean, it must be a very, very lonely journey otherwise. I totally understand. So let's talk about Qanooni a little bit.
Okay.
Because that's my other thing. Anytime that I speak to somebody who's exited, because when I think about it, I can't imagine not doing it, because like you said, I love building so much.
Yes.
I think you get addicted to the cycles of stress as well, maybe to some extent.
Or just learn to live with them. I don't know which one.
I think you enjoy them, at some level, because why else would you do it? But then also you're like, I would never do this again, right? So why, and this is the legal sector, so it is different from what you were doing before. And also this is B2B, like pure B2B. So why, what, how?
So again, it was a conscious decision. Like, it wasn't something that just, sometimes you're, as a founder, something comes to you and you want to execute it. For me, for both my journeys, it's been a lot of based on research and trying to actually understand what is doable. And this wasn't any different, right? So Ziad and I knew we wanted to do something in AI. And now we're talking, GPT has already become pervasive in everybody's life. Everybody's starting to embrace AI. We know for a fact that this is going to change the way how people operate. Now, the question is, what in that space do you want to do with it, right? And so we actually set out trying to explore that, like what, and re-educating ourselves, understanding what the capabilities of AI was, right? Because at the end of the day, it might look like it, like AI just shows up and it does everything for you magically. That's actually not how things work, right? And so there was a period of re-education for ourselves, and there was a period of market discovery. We actually spent a lot of time looking at different industries before, because as you pointed out, I'm not a lawyer, he's not a lawyer. So legal was not something that we lent ourselves to very naturally.
Yeah.
We explored different sectors, right? I looked at education quite aggressively, actually interviewed teachers and school administrators to understand what it is that, where, if you were to introduce a tool, what how could be embraced. And interestingly, for people who are meant to be educators, you'd be surprised at how close-minded that sector really is.
Yeah.
And we looked at healthcare. Healthcare is just, there's so many use cases.
Yeah.
We looked at financial services. And financial services was the one that we were leaning towards probably the most, because that's, both Ziad and I are, that was our what we've been trained in. He's done the banking, the hedge fund, the private equity, the same with me. So we kind of have that we understand that space a lot better. And so that's really the one that we were leaning on. And interestingly, we then said we wanted to register an AI first business. So we went to our legal consultant, who is an individual that we had worked with throughout our Spotii years. So he had been our legal advisor throughout all of this ups and downs with Spotii. And so we had a very good working relationship with him. And we said, okay, we want to register an AI first business, and started talking about which jurisdiction. And you just try to figure out where we wanted to be based in the UAE. And he was actually the one who said, well, if you guys are doing AI first, have you thought about legal? Because legal has these use cases, right? And he was able to articulate, because he had been in the space, he'd been able to articulate those use cases and the pain points very well. And we said, okay, now we know what we need to solve for, and we can build towards this.
But I would assume that lawyers would be even more closed off than teachers.
It depends on who you speak to, right?
Really?
And this depends on the generation of lawyers as well.
Of course.
Actually, now interacting with lawyers, I've realized they're very open. So they are open to change, but they are very particular on the tool, right? In the sense that they do want something that doesn't work 80%, but that works probably 99%, right?
And they're not suspicious of
well, they are.
technology.
No, they are. They're very suspicious of technology, but they also value. So that's why we do think the way we were set up. Everything is on our product is available on free trial basis, and I tell everybody, I said, you trial it. You tell me if it's worth your time and worth your money. I'm not going to force this on you, right? And we've not had anyone drop off out of our POCs, right? So I think that they are suspicious, but if you build something that gives them their time back, they will use it.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, again, it was a very conscious thought process in terms of the space that we wanted to build into.
Very deliberate, yeah.
Very deliberate. Understanding the problem that we were trying to solve for, right? And knowing that we have the right solution. And even when we started building, the first 6 months was a lot of discovery. I had people come on, like I said, for free, trial it, give us feedback, improve, right? That's the other part of this whole thing. We're working in a space that's evolving so fast. You have to be able to iterate. You have to be able to stay on top of the latest technology, right? When the newest models come out, what works better for your use cases?
Yeah.
So we've built that foundation at the back end in order to be able to make sure that the tool remains relevant with all of our users, and that we are quick and efficient in how we deploy change. So we get the user feedback, we incorporate what we can, and we push it back out. And so if you look at what we had, let's say in January of this year, what we have today is like night and day.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's again part of a lot of that is learnings from Spotii, but that's also, I think, part of being a good founder. You have to be able to evolve
very fast
and evolve very fast.
So what are some, big high level milestones, numbers that you can share when it comes to Qanooni, like in terms of like growth metrics that you're tracking?
So a few things. First of all, we are headquartered in the UAE, but we're not limited to this region.
Okay.
Our tool is plug and play out of Microsoft. So you can pretty much download us if you want to use us. And that's allowed us to bring on users across the world.
Okay.
I have clients in US, Canada, Europe, Jordan, Egypt.
Law firms.
Individual practitioners all the way to law firms, in-house counsel, small businesses.
Okay.
So again, the tool is not limited just to lawyers. If you do a lot of contract work or you want to do legal research, like I as a founder use it a lot.
Yeah.
I get supplier agreements, for example. I use that to do that first iteration. I don't necessarily always have to go to external counsel. Now, if you think about it, as a small business, if you want to save on costs, right? Just download the tool and you can apply it to what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So again, we're not necessarily limited on who uses the tool, and that's a testament to the versatility of the tool. So we are global, which I'm very proud of. We have our 2 offices are in the UAE and London, and we're aggressively selling in the UK market as well. We've got some very good brand name law firms actually out of the UK that are trialing us. We've signed a partnership with a LPMS, which is a legal practice management system, and we will become their AI provider, which will basically mean that they have access to about 40,000 seats globally. And so all of their users will then be able to access us, which will definitely be
great distribution.
Exactly. So that's going to be our big distribution play out. And, starting next week, we're going to be in Saudi. We're sponsoring an event next week in Saudi. So we're starting to get... So one of our USPs, obviously, the third co-founder, Kareem, that I mentioned. He's an Arabic speaker. For him, it's been a big priority to make sure we're delivering a tool that's right for this region. And we have a massive first mover advantage in that space. So we're going to be taking the tool to Saudi next week.
Amazing.
And in terms of numbers, like I said, we have about over 300 people on a POC with us. We're already revenue generating. We are actually in the process of doing a small round right now. We're raising $2 million, and that's primarily to play out the additional distribution channels that we're
because the product is already ready.
The product.
This is your seed round?
So we did a I don't know what you call it. I mean, it's hard to put a label on it. We did a pre-seed at the beginning of the year, and we have a few investors that are coming back into this round. So I was speaking to an investor the other day. They called it a pre-seed plus. So I'm going to borrow from them, and I'll say this is a pre-seed plus.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Round terminology nowadays is very much whatever you want to make it. So it's plus, it's minus.
Yeah, I think as long as you have the right structure in place that delivers for your existing investors as well as you as founders, and as long as you have the right use for those funds, right? I'm not a believer of raising massive amounts of capital for the sake of saying you've raised massive amounts of capital, because I don't think that serves anybody in the long run. We have to be very mindful and all the elements, right? How much are you raising? What are you raising it for? What valuation are you raising it at? Right? All of those things come into play.
Yeah, and I think you were able to be very capital efficient when it comes to the Spotii journey. So that's also, you have a lot of learnings from that you're able to...
We are extremely frugal.
Yeah.
And I think that's also important, right? Because at the end of the day, especially if you've taken third-party capital, for me, that's a massive responsibility, right? Somebody is trusting you with their money.
Yeah.
And there's, for me, it's just every dollar, every cent. I'm like, I need to know exactly what is that return on that capital coming back to me.
I really feel like, Anuscha, that's also kind of our emerging market mentality. because I know you are also originally from Pakistan. So when you come from, a society that has a certain outlook towards money, because I feel like I'm exactly the same way. Like, how do we stretch this dollar? I don't know about you, and nobody in my company has a MacBook, so it's or at least none that we have paid for. If you need it for a particular thing for like making the iOS app or whatever, sure, we'll get it, but it's not going to be something that we do just as a matter of course, because if it's external money, then we're going to be really, really careful and spend it where it actually impacts the growth of the company.
But I think that'll serve you well in the long run, right? Because I think at the end of the day, your investors will appreciate you for it. But more importantly, you would have gotten your business to a certain level without taking excessive capital, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Taking excessive capital is never a good thing. It forces you, at least in my perspective, it can force you to make wrong decisions that don't necessarily serve you in the long run, right? Because when people give you that capital, they're expecting certain growth metrics. Nothing comes for free. There's an expectation behind that capital.
Yeah.
So you have to always be mindful of how much you're taking and why you're taking it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's do a few general, more fun questions. Okay. What is an overrated piece of advice that founders should stop following? Have you gotten any which you kind of internally rolled your eyes at?
I don't know. There's a cliche one: follow your dreams, follow your follow your passions. Is that what it was? I guess for me, I've always been very particular about how I've done things, and so my passion is it's building, I guess. But I also love, for example, race car driving. But I'm not a race car driver, so I think there's it's a good saying, and I think it does help you feel a bit energized. But I think it has to come with a lot of asterisks.
Yeah.
So I'm not necessarily roll my eyes, but I'll put a lot of footnotes underneath that one.
Okay. What is something that the legal sector keeps getting wrong?
Slow adoption.
Slow adoption.
Slow adoption. And you can look this up, but they were from all of major industries, they were the last one to adopt cloud.
Okay.
They're just slow moving.
Wow.
I think they're just very conservative, and maybe rightfully so, because they do have private data. Their data privacy is a big thing for them, but I just feel like they're just so conservative, and they need to sort of move a little bit
dial
faster.
down the professional skepticism a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. What is an opinion that you hold about entrepreneurship in MENA that most people might disagree with?
I think it's especially if you're looking from the outside in. I think people don't realize how difficult it is still here, particularly on the fundraising side. You have big headlines, what appears to be a lot of capital, but then there's a massive gap, I still feel, for startups and early stage businesses and their ability to raise funding. So I would say that I don't know how many people would agree with that, but there is capital here, but access to that capital for startups is still very, very difficult.
Why do you think that is? Like, what in your opinion is the reason for this?
I think the ecosystem is still quite nascent. It's been very helpful that we've had some large-scale exits, like the likes of Kareem and Property Finder, etc. But I think those are still far. I think we still need to get a lot more of those. So I think it's just a matter of that risk appetite. These large pockets of capital can maybe go to the US or whatever, get massive returns. Are they getting those returns here? I think they can. I do believe that this is a region, and especially with you can build something great here. But I do think that it's still taking time for that risk reward trade-off to become very apparent.
I think risk aversion, and I mean, I don't know, when you're kind of talking about those large pools of capital, are you specifically talking about VC funds or not? Because of course there's different pools of capital, but even within this asset class, risk aversion is so high.
I agreed.
And this is you've been in private equity. This is a high risk asset class.
Yes.
And still risk aversion is so high that we barely see any early stage deals, frankly.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah. I hear stories of people like getting a term sheet or whatever signed in a day, but that's only after they've gotten a yes from a big brand name international VC, for example, and then the local VC will actually sign on. Otherwise, they will take whatever XYZ months and they will wait for somebody else to pull the trigger before they come in. So, yeah.
That is an unfortunate reality. That is, I see it shifting a little bit. I see a lot more international funds coming in, wanting to play in these markets. My own funding experience for my pre-seed with Qanooni, we got capital from 3 institutions, one in the US, one in Europe, and one local. And the speed and decision-making process for the international players was just so much more was faster.
Yeah.
And I think that is it's just that their velocity of the deals that they see and their ability to process them, I think is just faster. And I'm hoping that our markets get there, and I think they will eventually.
Yeah.
I'm seeing a little bit of maturity on it. We're still very far from the US.
Yeah.
But inshallah, I think we'll get there.
Yeah. No, and again, on the flip side here, I've heard of funds that have just missed their deployment period deadlines. They simply did not deploy capital. And so now they're being forced to do like larger checks. They've gotten an extension on their fund. Now they have to do only, X $1 million checks versus before they were supposed to be a pre-seed.
Yeah, and that
fund.
takes away from the from that pre-seed stage again, right?
Where is the money coming from for pre-seed then? Yeah. So, I mean, my fourth question was going to be, what's an uncomfortable truth about fundraising in the region? But
I don't think it's just the region, by the way. I think ask any founder. It's probably the least fun part of the job. When you come across a good investor who is supportive of you, and I'm fortunate to have some of those on my cap table now, it can be a game changer. I think because they have access to a lot more resources than we do. I've relied on our investors for strategy, for HR, for introduction to other investors, introduction for business development. I've relied on different parts of and I've been very grateful that they've actually come through. So I think fundraising is horrible. But when you get the right group of people on your cap table, it can change the trajectory of your business.
Is there a belief that you held about the startup journey before you started that turned out to be completely false?
Before I started Spotii, to be honest, I actually thought it would be easier than it was. I thought, how hard can it be? I was like, and I think for me, Spotii was a very humbling journey.
Yeah.
When I started the business, I was like, I have access to people who have access to capital, so fundraising cannot be hard.
Yeah.
Right? Because I was coming from that universe. I was coming from an investment, like a fund background.
And private equity, which has massive checks, lots of money. I mean, you're talking about massive deals.
Correct. We were doing like $100 million deals plus, right?
Before lunch.
Million. Yeah. And then so I was like, how hard can it be to raise $2? I was like, people pay that in fees, right? Like, how hard can it be? So I think and then the second element of it was just the reality of what it takes to build a business. And when you're the head of that business, you're not sitting there as a manager. You have to execute. The buck stops with you. And so that sense, not only is that sense of responsibility a lot higher, but at the end of the day, you are everything from the janitor to the person who moves the furniture around to the person who's then sitting in front of investors and actually trying, so you have to span that entire gamut, and no one is going to do it for you, especially not in the early stages, right? And so I think that is another, and especially coming from corporate and going into a startup world, the fact that you don't have that infrastructure behind you, right? There's nobody to call up in HR to say, deal with this visa, right? You are the person dealing with that visa issue.
Or something's gone wrong with the office building, or like the landlord's coming in or something. I need to make sure my plants are alive.
Yeah.
They are my plants. Every time I go to the office, I am the one that goes around looking at every plant to make sure. I need to find my time in my day to do that.
Yeah. And I think that I probably did not appreciate that part of the journey as much as I do now, having gone through it the first time.
Have you built any habits that you think have helped you survive this far?
I do try to unwind in the evening. Either I'll go for a walk, weather permitting. I just put my headphones on and I walk on my neighborhood is nice in that sense. So I can walk outside. Or I will, as my kids do their homework, I'll sit in the room and read a book with them. But I try to just not respond to messages and emails. And that's the other thing. I mean, the number of communication channels right now, right? Like between emails, Slack, Teams messages, iMessages, WhatsApp. I'm like now on Instagram and LinkedIn. That's 7 already. I'm like, it's just like phone on mute, at least 30 to 45 minutes. You have to be able to just because otherwise your mind doesn't stop. I mean, what do you do?
I watch things. I also started painting recently.
Okay.
That's helped me. I realized that if I pick up something which I've never done before and it's hard for me to do, it helps me be mindful because then I have to focus. Okay. I've tried playing paddle. I'm not a sporty person at all. But when I'm standing there, if my mind wanders, I'm going to get hit in the face. Yeah. I'm not just going to miss it. It might actually just come smack me in the face. And that will remind me to be mindful and stop worrying about that email that I haven't sent or that message. So it's the same with painting. If I've gotten, or if I'm going to a painting class and I paid for it, and I have an hour or a couple of hours to go and paint at night, then I have to do, and I've never done it before. So I'm forcing myself to do something that's difficult and new and challenging, which forces me to be mindful. Because otherwise, I burn food all the time because I will put something because I have a 5-year-old and we're cooking ourselves. So I will be cooking something and I'll forget about it and it'll get burnt because my mind is wandering. It is a challenge.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna
but
lie.
I think it's important because otherwise the ability to burn out is just much. It's just way too high.
Yeah. And because my co-founder is my husband, so Metric lives with us.
Yes.
Right? It's in the bathroom. It's in the house. It is literally everywhere.
And you will never stop talking about it, right?
No.
Like
and it's fun. And we enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's not that, no complaints there, but it is something that is ever present. I found my child recording Metric pitches in my phone. Hi, my name is Mirana. I'm the co-founder at Metric. We've built Max. It does this. She will literally. So it is an ever-present, living, breathing thing, and we just have to deal.
It's a great experience for her, by the way. It's like
I'm enjoying watching her go through it with us. Very last segment, we're going to do like 3 finish the sentence kind of things. If I wasn't building Qanooni, I would be
reading a book on the beach.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like fun. The legal sector would move 10x faster if
they adopted Qanooni.
Yes, adopt Qanooni. Everywhere. They're everywhere. They're global. They're a global company. You can use them anywhere. Yeah, you can just download them and start using them today. Even if you're not the legal sector, even if you're a startup, you can just start using them. Yes? My younger self really needed to hear. I don't know how we went from the legal sector needs us to like very deep, like childhood work, but
you'll be okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think you're more than okay, Anuscha. I think what you've been able to achieve is absolutely phenomenal. And I want to hang out with you more so I can absorb some of your calm and some of the learnings that
I'm
come
glad
from...
I exude calmness.
You
That's
do.
the first.
You do. Because again, when I think about everything that you... And the timelines are so short when we talk about the Spotii journey and even up to Qanooni, there are really no gaps in there. And you have 2 kids. And, there was Abraj before that. Yeah. So it's just kind of like chop, chop, chop. And so... I think you're doing phenomenally well.
Thank you.
Like I said, I was saying to you before we started, if we tried to put together a dinner with everybody who's exited the same startup twice, I don't know if we would find anybody else other than you in the region. Maybe a couple of other people, but that's about it, right? So I think you're in a class of your own, and I think you've done phenomenally well, and I can't wait to see what you do with Qanooni.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited. I think what we've built with Qanooni is phenomenal. Really is. It's so cool to see people use it and people's reaction when they use it. So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, we definitely need to do this again. And this time, maybe I'll sit on the other side of the table and ask you the questions.
I would really enjoy that because I can completely relate. When I look at my product, I'm literally like sitting there with, the heart eyes emoji kind of thing, being like, this is beautiful. This is amazing. I think you have to love what you're building that much to be able to survive. But yeah, we need to do this again, and we need to do this more often. Thank you so much for coming in today, and thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I love talking to you.